Okay, we're recording. Hey everyone, so I'm here with Scarlett Demi. She is Scarlett Tantrika on Instagram, right? Can you like give some background about who you are and like what you talk about and everything?
Yeah, sure. So I teach tantric yoga, and I'm very interested in educating people on the authentic tantric path, which is really a yogic path for the worldly man or the worldly woman. So it was basically made for people in the Kali Yuga, or in the age of ignorance, like understanding that people couldn't all really go off in caves and stuff. They had families and work life, so this yoga was for people to be able to practice and attain enlightenment while still living in the world, sort of like the Christ saying of being in the world but not of it. And a
Hmm.
lot of people really focused on the sexual aspect of tantra, because unlike many renunciate paths that really suppress the sexuality, tantra was embracing of all energies, all aspects, and um, kind of put forth the notion of transmuting sexuality into a spiritual practice.
Amazing. That is really really cool. And yeah, it's cool to talk to you about it because I think that like a lot of people they they don't even know like the potential of what sex can be, or like they don't even know like that there's an alternative way to use that energy. Like people are just so used to having sex in this very like it's all about the ejaculation, I feel like, usually in most people's sex lives and everything. But yeah, I would love to hear more about like what got you to this path and everything, and like what maybe like if you want to share some of your past like sexual patterns or anything. Yeah.
Yeah, so I feel that, like with most things on the spiritual path, what you're seeking is also seeking you, kind of like the Rumi quote. And it's sort of been this subtle consciousness like calling me throughout my life. And um, the last few years, there was just more and more synchronicities, just like going to stores and seeing yantras, which are like the tantric visual diagrams, and just running into practices like Vajrayana and different Tibetan Buddhist practices, and seeing the relation between that Tantra and the Hindu Tantra. So it happened through most of the people that I was meeting, and also just like the symbolism in my environment and things that were just calling me. And in general, with the idea of sexuality, I come from a pretty strict-ish Egyptian family, and it's always been very taboo to discuss anything about sexuality. If we want to talk about, the sacred sex aspect, in general, in the Middle East, it's very suppressed. With all the Muslim countries, like you're not really supposed to, have premarital sex. You're not supposed to really show your body, things like that. And it was sort of like the extreme end of the suppression of sexuality, which didn't feel natural to me. And then, of course, growing up seeing the other extreme of um, just the overt, hypersexuality and the pornography and all these things, um, sort of didn't seem correct either. So I feel like Tantra, which is transcending sexuality and seeing that really when people are trying to have sex, they're seeking sexual energy, they're seeking union, they're seeking yoga, they're seeking love and connection. And that is a seeking of spirit. So people just get kind of caught in those lower chakras, and don't usually get a chance to ascend to the higher realms and realize that really when you go beyond, um, you don't even really crave it so much anymore. It's
Mhm.
of course you can still appreciate sexuality and sex and connection, but you realize that the whole time it was really just a gateway. So it's just
Interesting.
totally changed my life.
So how would you say like in what ways does like tantric sex differ from like normal, I guess like typical sex? Like what are the main differences, do you think?
Well, it's true what most people know, that like you can go for hours just, with connection. But the main thing is the goal is not orgasm and ejaculation. The goal is, just like all spiritual practice, it's presence and being in the moment. And then it's sort of that irony when you're not seeking the end and you're not seeking the goal, then you realize that the bliss and that orgasmic state is present all the time. And you can even reach it through meditation if you really advance and master your practice. So definitely tantric sex, just it's a powerful form of meditation. If you really are fortunate enough to attract a conscious tantric partner, which is contrary to what a lot of people think, it's not just like free for all. It really has to be a compatible conscious energy.
Right, right.
And yeah, go so deep and be so beautiful.
Yeah, that is really similar to like, I think where my interests have gone since the nofap thing. Because before we started recording, we were talking about how the nofap community can be kind of extreme in a certain way, where they are like, I don't know, it's like they're really intense.
Yeah, like 300 days and like 450 days.
I know, exactly. Yeah. And yeah, so I feel like since going through nofap myself, I have been more led to this way of thinking, like what you're talking about, where it's like I feel like nofap for most people it should be like level 1, like you don't masturbate, just to kind of rewire your brain for like 90 days, because like I think that if you're so used to masturbating to porn, I noticed that masturbating was really hard to do after stopping porn, because I would always think about it in my head while I was doing it. And so I think that like, but it's like never masturbating either also seems like not the answer either. So it's like, so
Right,
I think that what you're talking about makes a lot of sense, that it's like I think that, yeah, I don't know. I think that the nofap community, there is definitely something missing there, where they don't understand that, like, where you can take sexual energy and like infuse it in sexuality without losing energy, or like without, I don't know, you know what I mean. But yeah.
right. And I totally agree with you. I don't believe in like long term, forever celibacy unless you're going down, that kind of yogic path. I do think that it's good to have like a 90-day or whatever, just to break, those neural patterns. And it makes sense what you're saying about like when people have a hard time masturbating without pornography when they get used to it, because like it's just a neural association. And so I'm really into, like the neural biohacking aspect of it.
Mm-hmm.
Um, but yeah, definitely, I would love to like be able to share that with the nofap community, that it's always good to have balance, because when you're just so extreme and resisting, um, what you resist persists. Like,
Yeah,
don't think about a pink elephant, you're going to think about a pink elephant.
exactly.
Whereas really, I'm serious. Like, once you fully surrender to it, you really go beyond it. Like, you just honestly, it loses that addicting stigma once you surrender to it, and you're like, yeah, I have this energy, I'm a sexual being, and you
Mm-hmm.
just go fully into it. Then you go beyond it.
That's really interesting. So I think the main thing is the orgasm. It's like if you are trying to masturbate in like a conscious way, do you still orgasm with tantra or no?
So what's really fascinating about tantra is like most men are not actually aware that they can have multiple orgasms, just like women. And
Right, without ejaculating though, right?
right,
Right.
yeah, without ejaculating, they could choose to at the end, or they could just stop. Um, but the goal is not the orgasm. But I think you're asking me basically like what would be the best thing to do with the orgasm, or
Well, it's like I think that for most people, the idea of masturbating and not orgasming is like torturous. It's like, why
Right,
would I
right.
even
But
do that? Like, what's the point then?
right. But I think that there is a point some people choose to not orgasm at all and still feel some pleasure, but I don't see like orgasm as the enemy. Like I think it's okay to have orgasms without ejaculating. Some people argue no, like don't orgasm at all, because there's a bit of a loss of energy, which actually makes me think of what we were saying earlier about with women. And um, of course, like with women, we're actually, contrary to what society says, we're fortunate that we don't lose as much energy because we don't create, our body doesn't create so much semen and use blood and plasma and everything to create that. So people don't realize that there is subtle losses of energy with orgasm, but it's all situation dependent because you can have a partner and if your partner's conscious and you're conscious, you can actually add years of energy to each other's lives. It becomes sort of like a magnetic battery charging sort of thing.
That's
Just like how sometimes like some people could deplete you after a conversation, and then some people can totally energize you. And it's alchemy, right? Like Tantra is actually body alchemy. It's magnetism. It's like playing with energy.
really
So it's
interesting. So, yeah, I think that's what a lot of people don't understand is that like, because yeah, so many men they equate ejaculation with orgasm, and they think that if they masturbate, they need to ejaculate, and not that they can train themselves to orgasm without that. But you're saying that women in general, when they masturbate, is there like, because I know women, they say, because I'm not like too familiar with like what Tantra says about women and their orgasms and like are how many
different.
different kinds there are or anything.
Yeah, there's different schools of thought. Some people say you're a woman, you could do it as much as you want. Other people say no, don't lose your energy. It differs based on like which tantric teacher. When you get into Taoist sexuality, they have their different views. But the general thinking is that there's different types of orgasms for women, and like the ones where a woman um, has possibly like the clitoral orgasm where it's like very explosive, like say that could be a loss of energy,
Hmm.
whereas like the others like cervical kind of orgasm is not a loss of energy. um, I still think it's very much situation dependent upon the partner and the energy and the alchemy that you're having.
That is really, really interesting. I want to know. So we were also talking about like what it feels like to be women in these kinds of topics, because even for me, I feel like I know very little about the female aspect of Tantra. And I feel like you were saying before, there's really not many women who I've seen who are really like into this type of stuff, or like, yeah. I don't know.
Yeah,
So
I think.
it's, yeah.
Yeah. What were you gonna say?
Uh,
I mean, I think
yeah, go for
it's
it.
obviously because of like the. I think it's in general socially, it's still more acceptable for men to talk about certain things. Just like the that sexual shame aspect where um, I think as a society we're still not fully ready to discuss these things, but I think we should and kind of destigmatize and de-pervert sexuality so that it can become pure and like we can discuss it and remove all these weird underground, you know, um, taboo sort of sexual things that happen when it's suppressed. So yeah, how do you
Definitely.
feel about it? Like um, how do you feel
Well,
when you're like talking about this?
well,
With right?
I think that like you mentioned, you've gotten like stupid comments from men sometimes. Like I've gotten really dumb comments from men who are just like, whoa, I didn't even know women masturbate like at all. And it's like, I don't know, it's just like, or I've gotten comments of people in the nofap community being like, oh, like now women are infiltrating our spaces, and like what do women know about like men's sexuality and everything. And it's like, it's so interesting. It's really interesting. I feel like, well, no wonder why you guys have issues with porn, because you know very little about women, and so like that's probably the only place you can go to feel some kind of sexual pleasure.
And intimacy, really.
Yeah.
Yeah, I was just telling people like I'm not really a fan of, you know, like women's circles or men's circles. I feel like there's too much like separation of the genders when we're really like, yeah, we have some anatomical differences, but we're way more similar than we are different. And if we kind of remove those walls, like it would just be easier for everyone. Like men would be able to relate to women and they wouldn't feel so lonely and isolated and create these MGTOW movements and whatever. So I think like we should, I think what you and I probably both stand for is like integration and like not making it a big deal whether you're male or female, and realizing we're more similar than different.
Definitely. And I would definitely agree with that on like both sides, because I feel like men, they have the MGTOW movement, and then women, there are some women who I feel like really hate men, or like really are very like bitter towards men. And I think that both sides could stand to like improve themselves. but
Yeah, totally.
but yeah, that's interesting. I think I think one of the hardest things is finding a man or finding a woman, like just finding a partner who's on the same mentality about this kind of stuff, because if one person is not on the same page, then I feel like that relationship is gonna fail, because what you do with your sexual energy, it's just so, it affects everything about the relationship. And yeah, yeah, what are your thoughts on that, on like finding people?
Yeah, I think it all comes down to sexuality. I think how you use your sexual energy is how you live your life. Even the way someone orgasms or has sexual experiences, it directly translates to your life.
Mm-hmm.
So, say people who like they're the type that have like really quick rushed sex, their life will look like that, be really quick and
Mm-hmm.
rushed. Or people that um, don't honor their sexual partners, they just use people, you know, they just conquer and whatever, then their life looks like that. They end up being, you know, that aggressive, whatever, business person that just takes and, you know, isn't really like living symbiotically. So I think the same thing is like with men and women, because of the sexuality and how for so many years now women have been shamed and suppressed and really punished for showing sexuality because of misunderstanding and like these ego, really like male ego and female ego insecurities of allowing, because sexual energy is so powerful. And you know, it's just ironic, the more that women have been suppressed and covered up and shamed and not allowed to have, you know, free whatever sexual expression, the more men have had to suffer as a result, because they're, you know, decreasing their own supply of sexual experiences, and then they have to, you know, oh, why can't we get laid, or why can't we find women, and da da da. And it's symbiotic, so what men do to women ends up being what women do to men. And so if
Mm-hmm.
both genders just created more respect and understanding and less shaming, you know, not being like, oh, you've had this many partners, well, I don't like you and whatever, like that kind of shaming aspect and things, I think is what really drives the suppression and it's just fear. It's fear and ego, and then it just creates separation. So
That's
I
really
think,
interesting. Yeah, I mean, I think that is interesting, because they say that like one of the biggest reasons for why most marriages fail is sex. And like they say that like the three main reasons are money, kids, and sex. And that like it's like there's so many mixed messages that women get. It's like on one hand, sexuality is bad, but on the other hand, if you aren't giving it to your partner, then he's gonna run off and cheat on you, or he's gonna develop a porn addiction, or like, and it's like there's this pressure to like, you know, fulfill a man's needs when you're in a relationship with him, but also not be too overly sexual. Like, I don't know, it's like so many mixed messages. And I think that like, yeah, I think that men, I think a lot of the healing has to come from men, because men are like the initiators. I see like masculine energy is very like leading the way, and I think that if men don't start to learn how to control their sexual energy, then that's going to negatively impact women's ability to control their sexual energy, because I feel like men, when they turn to porn, and when they turn to like um I don't know, like other things that like are just outside of their own relationship, then they end up like breaking women's spirit almost, and then she ends up, I don't know, I just feel like if men had better control over their sexual energy, and they could really pour into like a woman, and then she can really feel safe to express her sexuality with him, because she can recognize like that he really values her, or I don't know, I feel like right now so much sex that happens is very like self-centered, and very like it's all about masturbating with the other person's body, whereas I think like tantra, it's so much more about the other person, or like, or just, yeah, yeah.
Yeah, I totally agree with you. And it's interesting you bring that up, because there's like these social kind of stereotypes of like the breeding wife and like the sacred prostitute. And just what you're describing kind of sounds like the Madonna whore complex, where because of that shaming and compartmentalizing, where men can't reconcile that women are super sexual and super innocent, so they want to put them into either category. You're either like the pure, you know, girl that I could bring home to mom and that, you know, I can marry and have kids with, but that desexualized woman is not really someone that attractive to sleep with, you know. So then it ends up being fragmented, where there's like, okay, the affair and the sexual girl who you know, a guy could like disrespect per se, or, you know, do those kinky things. But that's just a false kind of fragmentation, because every woman has both aspects of like the virgin and the whore, and the, you know, just the purity and the wild, untamed feminine. That's every aspect of women. So
I
when they're in
love the way you put that. I love the way you explain that. That's so, I love that. It's so true. I feel like, yeah, I know. I feel like men, I know exactly what you mean. That's such a good way to describe it. Like, yeah, the woman you bring home to your kids is not the same woman that, it's like it's hard to see her as the same woman that is going to do all these sexual, like, not vanilla things with you or something, but then but by doing that, you end up creating a situation where you're never going to be fulfilled sexually in that relationship. And I feel like sex, it really is a very motivating energy, so that can tear a relationship apart. And like, yeah, so what do you think is like the first few steps to take to like see like for a man to see that a woman can be both and feel comfortable with that, and like, I don't know.
Yeah, I think good question. I think the first thing is that men need to conquer their ego and conquer their fears. There's a lot of false stereotypes that a woman who is in her sexual power, in her sexual energy, is going to be someone who's unfaithful, or she's going to cheat, or she's not going to be satisfied, or she's seen so many penises that she's not going to like yours. Like, just wild, just ridiculous things, really, which are fed by pornography and that false imagery. So I think men needs to realize that a woman who owns her sexuality is not necessarily someone who's going to be unfaithful or who's not going to value a man. Or I would actually argue that it could be the opposite. Like it could be women who have been so suppressed that they haven't fully experienced their sexuality and gone beyond, that they would maybe be more likely to be unfaithful. But in general, fear of anything like that in general should be just conquered, and to really be able to connect with a woman and to have trust, and that all comes with a spiritual practice. If a man is in tune with himself, he knows how to use his spiritual antenna, his intuition, which I think men can be just as intuitive as women. I don't think really there's a divide in that. Then he doesn't have to be so afraid of women's sexuality. He can feel her, he can know her, he knows he can trust his partner, he knows he can allow her to be a sexual goddess and that she's still going to value him and love him. And just undoing all that fear programming that we see in these tabloids when we go to the supermarket, and the cheating and the this and that, and that shame of like, oh well, I'm not a man, like this woman's not mine, she's been with another guy, and just all very strong ego thought forms that need to be conquered. And just realizing that even the fact that a woman could be extremely sexual and not have had many partners, that every woman is a unique fingerprint, and the more a man can feel safe within himself and allow her to express her kundalini energy, her sexuality, the more actually he is rewarded by being able to be nourished by that energy, and they can both grow together.
That's really beautiful. Do you think that women do you think that women have a harder time like opening up sexually to a man, like because one interesting thing that I've heard from a few men who are married and who have developed porn addictions is that they feel too afraid to ask their wives to do certain things that they want, or like they're too afraid to like degrade her or something, or like to do something that might be degrading to her. And
Yeah, I've heard that too.
so
It
what do
kind
you
of reminds me of guys that say um, like they apologize before giving you a compliment. Like, I'm sorry, but you're beautiful. It's like
that is so unattractive. When a guy says that, I feel like I don't know.
in defense of men, there's a lot of upheaval right now with the
Yeah.
divine feminine rising, like these Me Too movements and all these things. It's like now we're going the other sort of extremes where, women who have been so frustrated and abused and whatever, suppressed, and men who've been abused and stuff. It's just like now it's kind of turning where people are still learning, like, okay, well, what's respectful and what's acceptable and stuff. But
Yeah,
I'd say,
I get it for sure.
yeah, and Tantra is actually all about goddess worship. So, like in Tantra, um, there's yoni worship, there's goddess worship, and it's, I mean, like, don't you love like when men actually like compliment you? Like, I love it. I think
Yeah.
women at their nature love to be complimented. It's just that men have done it in just these retarded ways of like, just like tacky pickup lines, and um, just the pickup movement is not really so much about natural gifts, more like manipulation and stuff like that. So that stuff doesn't translate well energetically. But if men show up authentically, and I would love if there was like a resurgence of like poetry and just chivalry and love, because I think men are actually dying to do that again. Like they want to be like that. They want to be emotionally expressive and loving and intimate. It's just our media and our social programming that have made it so that you're not really a man if you do that, or supposedly men want sex and women want relationships. My experience is entirely different. I think men really want relationships just as much as women. So just like undoing all the brainwashing.
I couldn't agree with you more. I completely agree. I feel like the art of courtship and romance is like faded away, and it's really sad. Like I think that men do like to do that stuff. I think that I I don't know, like when it comes to like gender and stuff like that, I have such, I guess, controversial. I've been told that they're very controversial views, but like I don't know. Like I love when a man is like a man and like when he'll do like traditionally masculine things like yeah, like making sure I'm safe or complimenting my beauty or like um providing for me, like all that stuff. And as a woman,
Yeah,
I can you hear me? I can't
yeah,
so
yeah. Just cough for
okay.
a bit.
But yeah,
Yeah,
like
yeah,
I love when men are like men and like they like they can
yeah.
care for you, they can provide for you, and they I don't know, and I love being in my feminine energy when I can be very like soothing and nurturing to a man and like cook for him and I don't know, like do things that like feel very traditionally feminine. I feel like that that art of those, I guess, like gender roles, I feel like I don't know, I feel like most relationships nowadays happen like through DMs and just like I don't know.
Yeah, the technological kind of cover up of it things. I agree with you. I think that like if someone resonates with like a traditional relationship where like say the woman doesn't want to work and the guy is going to work, like if that's what makes them happy, then that's what they should do. I think that it's not so much about every woman has to work, but
Right.
she should have the ability to choose it in a sense. And
Definitely.
honestly, I think both men and women are overworked. Like I think that over masculine energy is like people are exhausted. I think everyone needs to work less and manifest more and move into that kind of paradigm where it's like let's say a woman who wants a man who's wealthy or who provides for her, you know, she'll be called like a gold digger or like whatever, when that's actually the natural essence of a woman, like to want a man to provide and to give.
Hmm.
Of course it's different if a woman's, I think like pure, you know, material based relationships are destined to be successful, but I think the material has a lot to do with the aspect of a relationship and you can't really ignore it. You know, a woman needs, you know, that kind of material sustenance to feel safe and stable, so you know you have children, whatever, like all those traditional things are part of our makeup and I don't think we should deny it.
Yeah, and I think that most men like I think that most, well, it seems like there's a split. There's some men who I feel like love doing that stuff because it makes them feel more masculine and it makes them feel like like they're in their manhood when they do stuff like that. But then I've also heard from some men who are very like, you know, they believe everything should be 50-50 and everything, but those are usually the types of men I've noticed who tend to be very disconnected from masculinity. Like they're very like, which isn't a bad thing. I think that like some men are more naturally like feminine and some women are more naturally masculine, but I think that like if each gender is really tapped into the essence of either femininity or masculinity, then those natural characteristics kind of like show themselves, I think, you know. But
Yeah, absolutely. I think people are like a fingerprint, you know, everyone's unique. They have different desires, tastes, wants, needs. So um, whatever resonates should be allowed to happen naturally. Um, but I do think in general, balance in everything is more sustainable because if there's any extremes, like, you know, like cutting off energy, like cutting off, if a guy's cutting off his masculine and it's something that is very deeply naturally feminine for a woman in that partnership, like there would be eventually discord and fragmentation of that energy because you can't really have like to me, it's like energetic blockages. Like you have to have balance in everything you do, but also people should be allowed to have their like unique tastes and like unique expression.
Definitely, definitely. Yeah, that's really interesting. And I think I wonder if like sexual energy is at the heart of all those patterns, because I feel like even with genitalia, you know, how men, they enter a woman, like a woman receives
Right,
something
exactly.
a man gives to her, and like the, yeah, yeah, it's really interesting. So do you like, do you think, because you mentioned earlier that you feel like women either, wait, I forget, did you say that women, they don't lose energy when they orgasm, or they don't lose as much energy, or they get
They
energy?
much as men lose when men ejaculate, because um, women's sexual organs are regenerative, so we can essentially reabsorb whatever fluids that our body creates, whereas for men, because they're emissive, they emit energy from their lower chakras through the ejaculation. They lose that energy. It's actually really interesting, the dynamics of yin and yang, like Shiva, Shakti, between men and women. If you notice, men's protruding organs are in their lower centers, in the root, the sacral, and the power center. They give from their lower centers. That's why a man's genitals are yang, they're protruding, whereas women give from the higher centers, from the heart, throat, third eye, crown, and that's why women have breasts, because breasts protrude from the heart area. So there's even like a
Hmm.
physical aspect to it. It makes a lot of sense, right?
Yeah, I've never
So
thought of it that way.
yeah, so that actually backs up the what you're kind of getting at is like that the fact that men give from the root, which is the root is stability, you know, kind of like material, which that actually explains why women kind of seek material comfort from men. And the fact that women are emissive from their breasts shows why we're nurturing from the heart. So we actually give more of that heart, the astral energy to men. So it's
That is
complementary
so
energy.
profound. I've never thought of it that way. That's so profound.
Yeah, it's a one of my favorite teachers, Omram Mikhail Ivanov. He's like a Gnostic, and he has amazing spiritual knowledge about love and sexuality. So I highly recommend people check him out. He's very
Okay.
powerful.
I definitely will. That's really, really interesting. So, what are
Yeah.
your thoughts on like, um, I guess masturbation in general? Like what's the right way to masturbate? Because this is something that I'm still trying to figure out. Like, because I've talked about it recently on my YouTube channel that I don't really believe anymore that like masturbation is always a bad thing and that there is a healthy way to do it. But I've noticed that when I do it, I always keep thinking about porn. But like what's the right way to do it? Like, is there a certain way that you're supposed to practice stuff with it, or like how do you like, what's the right way to masturbate?
Right. So in general, my philosophy and what I teach with people is like there's no I kind of stay away from general rules. I think everyone should always fall back to being their own sovereign being their own master. And so with developing your spiritual practice, your meditation, yoga, you can just always tap into yourself and ask yourself. I think everyone, you know, if there's other people listening that are struggling with the same thing, definitely ask yourself before you're about to sit down or lay down and masturbate. Ask yourself, what is your intention? Everything's intention. Are you doing it because you're not feeling good and you want to get away from something? Are you doing it because some external sexual vampiric energy is kind of pushing you to do it? Are you doing it because you want to explore your body in a healthy way? So the more you meditate, the more you get in tune with your body, the more you know your own motives, you know your own self, know thyself. So I think you have to have a spiritual practice. You have to know yourself, and there's a way to turn masturbation into meditation and to turn it into self-love. You hear people talking about sex magic, manifesting with that orgasmic energy. It's very, very, very important to be aware of your thoughts while you're masturbating, because that's like law of attraction times 1,000. Sexual energy is very, very, it's very powerful, which is why people get stuck in these sexual loops, pornographic loops, toxic relationship loops. You have to meditate. You have to control your breath, spirit. Spirit is life, breath. You have to breathe, you have to meditate, you have to do yoga, and have control over your body. If you can control your breath, you can control your body, you can control your mind and your emotions. And it all goes hand in hand, you know? You can't escape life by having a, 20-second feel good orgasm. Everything's gonna just recycle and
Mm-hmm.
cycle again. It becomes a karmic loop. So rather than, try and escape the harsh realities of life through having an ejaculation, um, a person should seek to go internally and face themselves, face their demons, and see, like, what are they running away from? What what is it that if they faced and got rid of, they could, no longer have to do that. So
So
that's
you
how I feel.
mentioned like law of attraction stuff. So like are you supposed to basically think about what you want, or like picture yourself doing stuff that you want to bring into your life when you're masturbating pretty much? Or is it more like you are not supposed to have any thoughts in your mind and just focus on a feeling or something?
Um, what whatever comes naturally. I think it's a positive thing to focus on the self-image of yourself. Since it's a self-love practice, it's healthiest to focus on your self-image, how you see yourself, and what kind of energy and vibrations going through your body as you're self-pleasuring. Because when people are self-pleasuring to the pornography and they're feeling the guilt and the shame, like, that becomes the amplified emotion. That becomes why, men can't approach women in public, because there's this subconscious shame and guilt that's constantly getting amplified every time they watch the porn. But if you stay mindful of your emotions and your energy and what you're thinking of while you're self-pleasuring, that's going to amplify. So you can kind of sort of reality hack, and sort of think of your future abundance, or think of yourself in your most attractive form, or whatever it is that you want to attract. But I would say that's more of an advanced practice. I'd say if someone's still just getting themselves off of an addictive, like, habitual pattern, then they should focus on the pleasure of the sensations, just through the touch and the pleasure's sake. They don't have to. It's kind of a false program that you need a visual image for stimulation, because eventually, if you completely cut that off, you can learn to just have pleasure just through your just through the touch and through the movement of energy. Just how people can move energy with Reiki, and like, it's just commanding the energy sexually through your body. And really, once people get rid of those mental afflictions and emotional afflictions, like, it's not that part comes easy.
Mm-hmm.
Like, the like, what do you think about, or what do you masturbate to? Like, first, kind of remove the gunk from under the rug, and that part's gonna be natural. You're just gonna, when you love yourself like that, you're just gonna, like, enjoy yourself. You're gonna enjoy your body, and it's gonna come naturally. You're just gonna feel good, like, self-pledging without needing. Because what happens is, when people aren't aligned in their chakras, usually it's like a sacral chakra deficiency. So you're not really moving things up from the root. Probably many people who have sexual dysfunctions have, root chakra issues, dysfunctional families, whatever, stability issues. And so that energy from the root draws on the sacral, or it could be, the solar plexus, not enough personal power, so that draws on the sacral. in general, like when those chakras aren't balanced, that sacral is depleted. So it kind of goes out grabbing sexual energy from the environment. But if you learn how to channel the energy from source energy or from the earth energy and bring it, or just from your other chakras, creating all the balance, you're not going to have that grabbing sacral energy.
That grabbing energy, I know exactly what you're talking about. That's how it feels when you're watching porn, is like it's like you enter this like dimension and it just like cycles you through this, and then it like spits you out on the other side and you're like, whoa, what did I just do? But yeah, that's really interesting. I think that like I think because I've tried to masturbate in that way before, where I'm like thinking about myself, or I'm just like trying to focus on my own body or focus on my own breathing and like just the physical sensations. But I've noticed that like so much porn and even just like past sexual experiences, it's like I need to think about them to stay aroused. It's like hard because I think a lot of men feel this way too, and I think that porn kind of trains you to feel this way too, that it's like you need some kind of visual, like lustful type of imagery to feel aroused, because just thinking about yourself, it's hard to feel aroused when you're just thinking about you or something, or like, so yeah, that's really interesting. um
Well, it reminds me of like what they say, like neurons that fire together wire together.
mhm,
So it's just because it's become embedded in the
mhm,
neural pathways. Like the brain works on like association. So if someone's like associated sexuality with visual image and they've repeated that over and over, it
mhm.
becomes like a carved in, you know, trail.
Right.
So it's gonna take the same amount of repetition and creating new associations,
Mhm.
new masturbations, new kind of like visual imagery, like associating, um, say, a pornographic visual imagery with a different emotional state, maybe with a state of like, um, rather
Guilt.
than pleasurable, associating it with pain, you know? Yeah, like learning to associate the visual, that the visual kind of aspects of that with pain, rather than pleasure, because it's just like a false association of thinking that it's pleasure,
Mhm,
because it's
mhm.
short-term pleasure but long-term pain. So it's really just habits and repetition. um, and I think where people probably get caught up is just the resistance. You can't resist it and be like, I need to stop, I need to stop, I need to stop. Like that doesn't work. You kind of have to surrender to it, surrender to yourself, accept yourself, breathe through it, love yourself, and really do the deeper inner work, because that's going to make everything else fall away. Because any addiction, like porn, alcohol, cannabis, whatever, it's just a symptom of something else. So once you uproot, and the only way to do that is through the meditation and through the yoga. Once you uproot that, everything else becomes easy. I mean, honestly, I've worked with clients that I thought, you know, it was going to be 3, 4, 5 months until we had some success. But we did some really deep shadow work and like uncovered, you know, whatever trauma was driving behavior. And within a month, like the client would tell me like, I have no desire anymore. It's gone.
Wow,
So
that's
it's
amazing.
doing that shadow work, you know?
What exactly is shadow work? Because I've heard that word a lot, and I've, as far as I understand it, it's just kind of like confronting the like emotional trauma that you've been through. Is that pretty much what it's about?
Right,
Yeah.
right, exactly. And unfortunately, I think our society has a lot of sexual trauma,
Mhm.
and sexual trauma can be anything. It could be anything from like actual abuse or touching to even just inappropriate, you know, flirtation or being, you know, looked at or pressured in a different way. Like um, all these things that kind of accumulate in a person's psyche tend to lead to the sexual dysfunction. So it's not always a sexual trauma when it comes to pornography, but I would say a lot of the time it is. And
Mm.
I think sexual trauma is kind of like a silent epidemic, really, for both men and women. The numbers are strikingly high, unfortunately. So if if someone has this trapped energy, right, say from an unwanted sexual experience, and they haven't faced it, so this trapped energy is just there in the background, and it's like, I don't choose my sexual experience, I don't choose my sexual experience, then your subconscious is like, well, I want to choose my sexual experience, so I'm going to choose porn, I'm going to choose this. Like, it's just it's an imbalance in that energy, because there's this hidden shadow energy crying to be released. It becomes this just trapped thought form, emotional form. So once you kind of release that, and you purge it, you get it out of your energy body, out of your emotional body, your mental body, then you're at peace with yourself. You're no longer seeking to remedy the balance through like um, inauthentic means, or just things that don't actually work. So it's unfortunate for men, especially, that they've sort of been trained into suppressing their emotions, but it takes a lot of like that emotional work, like facing the shadow, because the shadow is what's hiding. It's there in the background. You can't run away from the shadow. It's an aspect of you. People, have that like false positivity, like everything's great, I'm fine, I'm happy, whatever. But your shadow will always be there. It's always right behind you. So just like facing that aspect of you and loving it and embracing it and transmuting it, and then no longer being a victim and a slave to it.
Definitely, definitely. I feel like that's what nofap can help people with, is that it like helps you kind of detox yourself from this habitual thing that you've been doing for so long. But I think that like the energy work seems incredibly important to go along with that too, because I think what most people find is that when they stop masturbating or when they stop watching porn, all their energy kind of gets stuck in the body, like it just stays
Mm-hmm.
in the crotch and it doesn't go anywhere. And I think
Exactly.
that, yeah, so what you're saying about the yoga and like the
Yeah.
meditation and breathing, that seems
You
like
have to do
a
tantric
crucial
yoga.
aspect. Yeah.
You've got to do tantric yoga. You've got to do kundalini yoga. You've got to have control over your pelvic floor, your pelvic muscles. You have to know how to move that energy,
Hmm.
because you can't just let it build up and then, explode like a bomb. Like most people keep it in their lower centers. You have to bring it up here so that these centers get activated. Otherwise, it's going to, want to get out the other way.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that's so interesting. So people like you're saying that people basically notice changes kind of in a month of doing that stuff like daily, or like how often are people supposed to do that kind of stuff?
Well, I was just trying to show that it's situation dependent. It's not like
Mm-hmm.
not a time chronological thing, like where you need to do things a certain time. It's sort of like once you get rid of the problem, once you get rid of the root issue, then everything else falls into place. That's why I'm kind of recommending, like, don't just don't just say, I need to stop watching porn, I need to stop watching porn. Like, put that aside, and that stop being that resistance, and go within yourself and just say, what am I escaping? Just breathe. An hour of meditation a day, there's no way that you wouldn't eventually heal. But
Hmm.
it's just people kind of lazy. They don't want to do that work. They don't want to really go inside themselves. They want a miracle cure. The miracle cure is just to face yourself, to be with
With
yourself,
yourself.
realize there was no problem in the first place. That it's just mental affliction. It's just a creation from the mind. So
Absolutely.
yeah.
How do
Um,
how do you think
I think,
women can
yeah.
get more in touch with their like how do you think women can get more in touch with their like sexually liberated side without feeling like slutty or like dirty or like because I think like so many women that I've heard from, they do, and even in my own experience too, like sometimes after having sex with a man, you feel empty inside, or you feel bad about yourself, or maybe the man kind of like rejects you afterwards, where it's like, the classic, like, oh, he didn't call me back, or that kind of stuff.
Right.
What do you think
Well,
of all that?
again, everything's intention. And I think every sexual experience should have an intention going into it, and you should pick your partners wisely. I
Hmm.
think you can have as many partners as you want, as long as you're picking someone who's respectful to you, who like honors you, who wants it to be a loving experience. I think the problems when we removed love from sexuality and made it this carnal, animalistic thing, which, when you're not conscious, that could be fun. But when you're conscious being, and most people are becoming conscious right now, you can't really separate those anymore. You can't really separate the love from the sexuality. So I think for women, every woman has to just have that courage to um, go for it anyways, despite the possible backlash or criticism. Because if every woman does it, eventually things will shift and change. And I think it's already happening. Like I would say, like 40, 50 years ago, people didn't even realize that women enjoyed sex, and it's like now they're like, okay, yeah, they do. Or like now, oh, they're actually as sexual as us. Okay. So it's already happening. I think when you love, it's like self-love. When you love yourself, you don't care at all what someone thinks about you. You know who you are. So you don't, their opinion doesn't faze you. But it's also back to the intention of like when you're with your partner, the person you're choosing. It's most hookups are like negative feedback loops. When a person goes to a bar or whatever, and they're just trying to pick someone up for a hookup, they're seeking a sexual energy to temporarily fill them, and or maybe they think it's going to permanently fill them, but it becomes a temporary fill. And so if someone's intention is to take from somebody just for themselves, then they're going to attract someone who's also taking from them, because like attracts like. So it's just kind of like, I mean, it's polarity attracts each other, but also similarity. It's like that weird duality. So if you're seeking someone from a place of need, you're going to attract that need as well. It's
Hmm.
just like putting out to the universe. um, I would say the best thing when it comes to partners is just like become the magnet, become that source of like fullness that people just come to you, or you come to each other naturally and it flows. But if you're seeking to grab that sacral energy, it's not going to end well.
Yeah. No, that makes a lot of sense. I I've realized that for me, I feel like I feel most empowered by like almost not, I've kind of made like a little pact to myself that I don't want to have sex until I get married. Like I I've already had sex, like I'm not a virgin or anything, but like I'm, what's that?
A born again virgin.
Yeah, born again virgin, exactly. Um, but yeah, I think I've just come to a point where I feel like that screening process of knowing whether a guy is like safe, like emotionally, spiritually safe to have sex with, is so like hard to decipher sometimes, because it feels like, I don't know, I feel like we talked about this before too, like there's that whole pickup artist game and everything, where someone can really kind of make you feel a certain way, but then after you do that with them, they change, and it's like you get a different
uh,
feeling from them. And it's like I don't know, it's I feel like I personally, like I think I'm just a very sensitive person where I feel very like affected by sex. And so I feel like I don't even want to do that until I meet the person who I know is like truly committed to me 100% and everything. But what do you think about like partners and stuff? Like what's been, oh, can you still hear me? I don't know if you can still hear me or not. I'm gonna wait for the connection to come back. Okay, just waiting for Scarlett. This is a really interesting conversation. Definitely some ideas that I haven't thought about that in depth, honestly. Okay, hopefully her connection will come back. Okay.